Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all nerdy things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. I'm your host, Richard Durante. I use the pronouns he, him, and today we're going back to 1987. We're joining a group of kids tasked with preventing the end of the world at the hands of Dracula and his ghastly crew. They banded together and formed a squad, the Monster Squad. Please welcome the actor who betrayed their fearless leader, Sean, and director of Wolfman's Got Nards, André Gower. André, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to connect with new people.
So just to start off, I have to apologize. I owe you some royalties. My copy of Monster Squad was pulled off of a VHS way back when. My mom and I had kind of both fallen in love with the film immediately, and she ripped it off of. It was playing somewhere on the TV, and she's like, "Oh, I gotta get a VHS. Hold on." So that was kind of our keepsake version of the film. And then again, it wasn't until the 20th anniversary really that the DVD came out, and I had something substantial to show to other people. Like, yes, this film existed. This was kind of real.
Right.
So I just to get started, before we dive into Monster Squad, it is customary here that we ask our guests this first question: what is your favorite sandwich?
The answer is peanut butter.
That is a very straight. Are we talking just white bread, peanut butter?
I actually prefer like a grain bread or a wheat bread. But yeah, back in the day, it used to be white bread. Just peanut butter.
Creamy, crunchy, just straight up Jif.
I tend to now I'm sounding like a total tool, but I tend to I like the natural peanut butters a little bit more. I don't need sugar or a lot of salt in my peanut butter. I just like peanut butter. And that's sort of the adult Andre peanut butter sandwich. I answered your question very quickly because there is only one. There's only one answer. Look, I love sandwiches. They're great. And if it has a pickle, it's even better. But when it comes to if I had to have a sandwich, it's going to be a peanut butter sandwich. Now, there's only probably 3 people in the world, and none of them are listening to this, that know what I'm talking about here. I used to have a kid Andre sandwich. If I may divulge,
please do.
This was white bread, peanut butter, a slice of American cheese, and Lowry seasoned salt.
Wow.
Don't knock it until you try it because it's pretty damn good. But it sounds gross. But no longer, I no longer make that.
I was gonna say I don't think it's in the realm of diets at the moment. I feel like that is just kind of a catastrophe waiting to happen.
It's good. It's a good.
It sounds delicious. It sounds delicious.
I want someone to try it and then tweet it to prove that they did, and then. But you can. I just it's like. I don't eat American cheese much anymore, just because it's not food. It's like it's so weird.
I believe it's called processed byproduct.
Yeah, I think it's
something
processed cheese food.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so it has food in the title, but it's not really food.
It has cheese too, and
That's
technically.
Right. But I do. But right. I do like cheese. I like other cheeses, but it's not on that sandwich. So straight peanut butter. Give me a nice fresh thing of grain bread or wheat bread or even sourdough. Peanut butter goes on sourdough, but it's got some peanut butter on it, and I'll be a happy camper.
I now have a new list of sandwiches to try, so that's good for me. So getting started, what was it like being a young actor in the 80s?
It was actually interesting question. I don't get that one a lot. The overall experience question is, but what was it like to be a young actor in the 80s? I think we only kind of know after the fact, because then we think back, because during the time it's just what you do and who you are. So you're really not, I mean, you're aware of what's happening, but you're not aware that this is something that not everybody does.
Mhm.
And even though there's a small, especially in the day, if we're talking about '80s, there was a lot of kids in the business, but not as many
Yes.
as there are today. It was a very small group. You knew most of them, and I would say at that time, of the whole population of kids under, let's say 17, 18,
Mhm.
um, all the way down to 5, there's probably 20% that do a majority of the work.
Yeah.
And I feel, I could be wrong, my math may be off, but I feel that I was fortunate enough to be a part of that 20% for a long time.
Mhm.
And so it was just who you were. This is what your day was. It was just kind of your world. Even though I lived in kind of, I had my entertainment world, which I was very involved in and very enthusiastic about. But it
Mhm.
was very important to me, and luckily to my parents, that I also existed in the other world, which was regular school, friends outside the entertainment industry, rec league sports, things like that, which were all super important to me. And
Mhm.
we made a concerted effort that I was able to kind of live in both worlds.
And it's interesting, and the reason I say that is because, when we go back, talking about everything from Haim, Feldman, Aston, like that type of crew, when you think 80s, you go back and you're like, you're right, there is that like small percentage, you're like, oh, they were in this and then this and this and then this.
Yeah.
But I think for you, especially as with Monster Squad, it's one of those lasting projects that kind of you are forever linked to, hopefully for better, and I think for better because it still holds up. So being casted in that film, what was that like? Because I would think would that have been considered like your first big feature picture, or?
I had done a feature or two when I was much low. I mean, most of my time was spent on television. I went from one
Hmm.
television thing to another, and and look, Monster Squad. You're right; it is a lasting thing that you're still attached to, that you're still connected to, and I don't really mind that at all, because it really is something rather unique,
Hmm.
that we're still talking about this movie that failed in 1987, and it's 34 years later. And I mean, my man's wearing a Stephen King Rules shirt, and we're talking about something that technically didn't happen 34 years ago. This movie didn't work. It died. It bombed.
Hmm.
But because of other stuff that I'm sure we get into,
Hmm.
it has endured. At the time, it was really, one of those. It was just another audition.
Hmm.
You mentioned other great names and great faces, of my, that we were contemporaries at the time. Everybody in town auditioned for this movie, just like everybody in town auditioned for every other movie. I guess, and we all have those stories of the movies that we auditioned for, that we would have loved to gotten. We all have our stories of those films or TV shows that, uh, we came very close to getting but didn't get, and you really
Hmm.
wanted. And
Yeah.
then some of us have stories, of TV shows and films that we did get, but we turned them down, and it ended up being a bad choice. Uh, and sometimes you can't do stuff because of contractual issues and scheduling
Hmm.
issues and things like that. And those are weird things to think about when you're 13.
Yeah.
Only after the fact that they're like, oh, that's actually like real world kind of like work stuff.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just an audition, and I don't know if Richard, or a lot of your audience may or may not know. I never auditioned once for the role of Sean.
I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah, so my body of work, mostly on television, 2 or 3 years prior to Monster Squad, was always kind of the cool kid of the group. Usually had great hair, a
Hmm.
lot of hair product, and maybe a leather jacket or two. And that
Of
was
course.
obviously the role that I get submitted for to audition for Monster Squad. And I auditioned for Rudy, and my initial auditions, my callbacks, screen tests, all that,
Hmm.
all for Rudy. I never auditioned for Sean, and I know why I didn't get Rudy, because and now we know, we know what happened. And
Yeah.
Ryan Lambert walked into that into that room and murdered his auditions and became Rudy in that moment.
Yeah.
And there was no other Rudy. And they were absolutely right. Could I have played Rudy? Sure. It's lines, it's hair
Yeah.
product and the leather jacket and
Mhm.
attitude. Ryan actually brought more than that to Rudy. He actually, if you really deep, like we've deep doved Rudy Halloran, which is actually his last name, on our own podcast years ago, and then on other stuff. But Ryan always felt that Rudy wasn't just this badass kid. Like all of the
Mhm.
hair and the jacket and the sunglasses and the cigarette and all that, it was all a suit of armor for Rudy,
Mhm.
and it was all a facade, and he was just like a really vulnerable kid. Because the question is, why is a junior high kid hanging out with these sixth graders? Because nobody would do that, and
Yeah.
he needed to belong somewhere, and found a way to do that. So Rudy's also a misfit, just like everybody else.
Mhm.
And uh, so a couple weeks after I auditioned for 2 weeks straight or something on Monster Squad, you get the phone call
Mhm.
and hey, that movie you read for a couple weeks ago, and you always have to ask which one because there's probably 4 or 5 during the week, and
Mhm.
they're like, well, yeah, you got cast in it, and it's like, oh, that monster movie, cool. And they're like, yeah, but not the role that you auditioned for. You're like, oh
Uh,
no, because that's usually bad.
yeah.
If you get cast in a movie
Yeah.
for the role that you didn't audition for, it's usually for
Mhm.
a smaller role or a lesser role.
Townsperson 3,
Right,
background,
that's right. Yeah, we really
Yeah.
like this kid, but let him be
Mm.
this side character. And
Mhm.
they said no, they cast you as the lead, and I was like, no, Rudy's the cool character. And so that was sort of the ongoing kind of laugh that we get out of that. But and it's interesting. I've actually realized over the last year or two, really since I've been talking about that more, especially as it pertains to something like Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary.
Mhm.
Uh, I realized that Ryan walked in, became Rudy. Everybody ended up being where they were supposed to be,
Yeah.
exactly where they were supposed to be.
Mhm.
But I also realized that I was super lucky because someone in the group, whether it was the casting director Penny Perry or Fred Decker or Shane Black or Peter Hyams, whoever was
Mhm.
in those rooms, when they came down to making a decision for Sean, uh, they didn't have a bunch of tape and examples of me reading Sean because I didn't.
Yeah.
I read for Rudy, and somebody in that room, and I still don't actually know who it is. I've never asked. Thought of me and said, "Hey, remember that one kid we read for Rudy, who
Yeah.
apparently, I guess, had something. Could he be Sean? Could we wash his hair and give him a really
Mhm.
bad haircut and
Clean 'em up and
put some clothes that don't really fit on him? And could he be Sean?" And someone else said, "Yeah, that's Sean." And it happened. And I consider that moment actually the really lucky moment, and I don't know who I owe that to.
Oh, that's such a switch. But and it's funny enough that you mentioned Rudy because I remember having this conversation when Stranger Things had came out and everyone was like so attached to Steve Harrington. I was like, that's Rudy. That's not Steve Harrington. That's
Right.
that's Rudy. But that's a whole other deep
That is
dive.
that's a whole
Deep
that's
dive.
a whole that's
That's
a
a
whole
whole
other
other
deep
deep
dive.
dive.
Uh,
But okay, so you're casted, as Sean and now you're on set kind of straight filming through like your day to day. Did you at any point like what was your mindset going in? Were you like, oh, this is going to be like the blockbuster of the year, or was it just this is a job, I'm going to read my lines, do everything. Kind of what was your mindset on the actual set?
I think it's a little bit of both of that. We knew we were involved in something big,
Mhm.
because just the footprint was a big deal. It was a big budget, a lot of effects, a lot of
Mhm.
locations, a lot of big set builds. Period piece. In the beginning, adventure story, monsters, special effects, explosions, Wolfman blowing up in midair. Stuff
Yeah.
like this. Which doesn't happen every.
Colorful language for children that
That's right. Which doesn't happen every day.
no,
Wolfman
it
just doesn't
doesn't.
blow up in midair, but Honestly, it is, especially, it's a job, and it's a lot of work, and a lot of people look at Monster Squad and go, "That has to have been so much fun to make that movie, and it must have been just like a big, like, amusement park ride."
Hmm.
And you're like, "You know what? It was certainly fun to be around the people and make that movie." However, making a movie is a lot of work,
Yeah.
and, it doesn't matter if you're 13 or 53. Um, and for kids, it's hard to work with kids for a number of reasons, and
Hmm.
a lot of it is, child labor laws, and, there are minimums of hours that you could be on set. There's minimum hours you can be in front of the camera. There's
Hmm.
minimum hours you have to be in school each day. So it's hard on a production to deal with a lot of kids, especially of different ages, because all the rules are different for
Yeah.
ages. So when you're really kind of the kid on a set, whether it's a commercial or a TV show or a feature,
Hmm.
um, there's no messing around, because you are already the difficult thing to work with just because of your age, because of all the rules surrounding you.
Yeah.
So you actually have to, you have to show up, know what you're doing, hit your mark, know your lines. There's no wasting time.
Hmm.
Um, there's time is money, and, the last thing a producer wants is a bunch of kids goofing off and wasting time, or not being in the right spot, or running off, doing something, getting lost, and that very rarely happens.
Yeah.
And especially on Monster Squad, it didn't happen. It was a very well run production, and but you had long days and a lot of work, and, you just got to show up, and you got to be on point.
And you had such a strong and diverse cast with you. I mean, everything talking about Duncan, to Tom Noonan, Stephen Mock, uh Trainer. You just had this laundry list of just good character actors who brought such a great presence that did you find anyone specifically on set who kind of mentored you, especially being a young actor at the time? Like, is there someone who pulled you aside and be like, maybe try this and this, or anyone who just kind of went out of their way to make you feel maybe a little more comfortable on set?
I think in that regard, I think Fred was really that person,
Hmm.
because he really made sure that he connected with us as a group, and, with me as an individual, and with the others,
Yeah.
um, because he knew what he wanted, to make happen. I think the other people that you mentioned, who are, good grief, by far some of the best people, they could be on screen. All you have to
Hmm.
do, don't just watch Monster Squad, go watch all the other stuff that they do.
Yeah.
Um, they just ended up, it was, that's smart casting. Just to bring in these people that have smaller roles, maybe, but have gravity,
Hmm.
and can affect a scene, and can shore it up, or be the center post, to a group of kids, or a kid, like the scene with me and Steven, in the bedroom, which I think is a great father son moment. I think the scene with Ashley Bank and Mary Ellen Trainor talking about, the candle and things like that, is
Hmm.
it's a great scene between a girl who's actually worked a lot as a 5-year-old and everybody's mom.
Yeah.
And it just works. Everybody just got really comfortable. And I think because Mary Ellen and Steven, were actual parents, they can relate to kids. Sometimes you see that on TV and films, like, you're like, this person doesn't have kids. They don't know how to talk to kids, or they're really uncomfortable around kids. You can kind of point that out. And then you have something like, Duncan and Tom Noonan. Everybody always asks, what was it like to work with Tom Noonan? I was like, I have no idea. I didn't work with Tom Noonan. I worked with Frankenstein's monster, because he was never. Same with Duncan. They said, "What was it like to Duncan?" I said, "I don't know. I work with Dracula,"
Hmm.
because, we never saw them out of makeup or out of character the entire production, and that was their choice, to keep the authenticity and that separation, because you didn't want to become friends with the guy that's trying to kill you.
No.
Um, and, I think that authenticity, and that kind of, discipline worked. Especially for scenes like Ashley's scream, and, me getting choked and things like that. So it's, there's, it just worked. Um, and, Fred, like I said, was sort of that guidepost person that was, connecting, making sure that you were comfortable, making sure that you knew where we were, what we needed to do.
Hmm.
Because it'd be confusing for, it's like, you have to know the whole story. You
Yeah.
have to know where you are in the script. You have to know what you should
Hmm.
be thinking or doing or saying, and you have to make it work. And because you don't shoot a movie in order,
No.
you know.
And it's, as you mentioned Tom and you mentioned Duncan. First off, when I think of Frankenstein and Dracula, those are the faces that come to mind. I mean, Duncan especially. Everyone asked me, oh, going back, talking Bram Stoker with Gary Oldman and going back and Nosferatu. I'm always like, go watch Monster Squad. Uh, Duncan, especially when he scares Phoebe, like just the look in her eye. Well, amazing acting for a 5-year-old at the time, but also just a generally scary Dracula. So, I mean, hats off to them for making that choice and being able to. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for them, because a lot of actors try and be friendly and contemporary, but also realizing we are actors. This is a job, like you said, and kind of sticking to that. So, looking back, are there any specific moments that you're held, like you yourself kind of hold dear, and whenever you're thinking back of it, anytime you're like, you know what, that was really special. I'm glad that happened, or that moment, or something along those lines.
Maybe just and what's interesting is, there's no dialogue. There's actually one line, and then I ad lib something. But when Steve and I are on the roof, I've realized that that was more of an impactful scene to kids around, the world than I realized it would have been. And it's super simple.
Hmm.
It's me sitting on a roof, and then the dad comes and joins you and watches a movie in the drive-in, which is down the street, and which is just cool.
Yeah.
And but everybody's like, uh, I realized that was an impactful moment in the film over the last, 10 or 15 years, because I've heard 1,000 stories of people coming up and telling me why that scene's meant something to them. And it
Hmm.
and it ranges from, like, dad and I used to go up and, sit in the attic on the ham radio, and it reminded me of that. Or my dad and I used to go to the drive-in. Or my dad was never home, and I never saw a movie with my dad ever. And I that was the one thing I always wish I did with my dad, and I never did. So,
Hmm.
it kind of runs the gamut of these stories, and so I think that's a really interesting moment that was probably unintended to have that type of impact.
Mm. So this is a point in this I'd like to tell everyone: you have to watch Monster Squad. Like it just this is, if that doesn't portray the amount of just raw emotion that you can draw from such a film like this. I mean, there I don't have any words. I specifically say that because my wife, I have tried many times to just start playing it, and she's like, oh, we're gonna try this again. And it is my goal in life to be like, we're gonna watch this straight through. Okay, we're gonna watch this straight through, you're gonna enjoy it, and that's gonna be the end of it, and you're gonna love it as much as I do. But that is a goal for another time. I think kind of going along those lines of talking about someone who needs to get into Monster Squad, is there anyone you've met so far that was a Monster Squad fan and you're like, I would have never guessed that, or I would have never assumed that? Like hearing, yeah, a certain president be like, oh yeah, that's one of my favorite movies, or someone you've just like had no idea would enjoy the movie as much as they did.
I don't know if I get surprised at it anymore,
Oh wow.
um, because it has this reach, and it
Hmm.
is part of the certain time. What I get a kick out of is really the, not only just, I don't say normal everyday people as a pejorative, but
Yeah.
normal everyday people that aren't attached in the entertainment industry in some way, which
Hmm.
makes them much better humans. uh, but uh, saying the same things, but people that are big names, that
Hmm.
this movie is their all-time jam. And there's a laundry list, of cool people. And uh, you know I find out one day that, like, Bill Hader is a huge Monster Squad fan. You find out that Keenan Thompson. I was like, "What is all SNL Monster Squad? Then why aren't I in the cast? Come on, Lorne Michaels. I can do sketch." Um, and Keenan Thompson, Bill Hader. I actually sent a signed DVD of the '07 DVD to Bill Hader and I had my manager send it to his manager, and I never heard back. That's okay. But it's also all these awesome filmmakers,
Mm,
that let Monster Squad influence, what they do now.
mhm.
Um, Mike Flanagan's a Monster Squad fan. He put the Monster Squad poster in Bly Manor,
Yes, he did.
which was cool. And I was always a little skeptical. I was like, because I got hit up on Twitter when everybody saw that in the third episode, and they're like, "And
Mhm.
Andre Gower, like, Mike Flanagan's a Monster Squad fan." I was like, "Hang on a minute, we don't know that because you don't know Mike Flanagan, and
Yeah.
nor do I. It could have been just the art department or the set dresser that grabbed some poster from a specific year and put it in the background. You don't know." But then
87? Yep, let's just
yeah, that's right. But then I actually heard on some decent bit of authority that Mike Flanagan actually that was his call. So I wrote an email to his agent through our sales agent and said, please
Mhm.
forward this to Mike Flanagan. And have not yet heard back from Mike Flanagan yet either. So maybe Bill Hader and Mike Flanagan are hanging out saying,
Yeah.
what's this? But I think my two really cool stories are
Mm,
way back in the day. I'd say early 2000s, 2005 ish. One of my best friends, from high school was an agent at the time, and manager friend, all these kind of industry types, and we would go out and go to dinner or have some drinks and go to events. And there was this new guy that was in town, and he was tall, he was good looking. He's kind of a big guy. He wasn't like really buff or anything,
mhm.
and but he was tall and imposing, and a good looking guy. And he was a client of my friend, and we hung out for like I don't know a year or two. And he lived on my side of town, so I ended up driving him home and dropping him off, or going out and getting more drinks after everybody gone to bed or something. And I see him 15 years later or something, or 10 years later at an
Mhm.
event. And oh, actually, I saw him at a screening of Monster Squad at the Egyptian Theater. I think it was during Beyond Fest.
Okay.
And he's like, I was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He's like, "What do you mean what I'm doing here?" I was like, "No, yeah, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I am a huge Monster Squad fan." I'm like, "You are?" I was like, "We hung out for years and you never said this to me?" And this is like 10 years, prior. He's
Mhm.
like, "No, I would never have said that to you back then." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I was no, I was just some dude that's new to town." And it's Joe Manganiello.
No
So
shit.
I used to hang out with Joe way back in the day, and he was brand new to town, and just fun guy. Like we'd go out a lot, and he was super cool. And then like I find out he's like this total Monster Squad fan, and like his friends tear and kill him again. I don't know if SNL has got Monster Squad written all over it. Like
They
there's got to we need to do a Monster Squad sketch. Come
yeah.
on, Lorne Michaels, if you're listening, tap tap. Um, but I think my all-time favorite Monster Squad fan is Ryan Gosling.
You really had to add another reason to love him. It's just
Yeah, what's not to like about Gosling? And now you add in that. And I found that out. He had a blurb and something when they were when he attached and they were doing The Nice Guys. And he said
Mhm.
the reason I chose this movie to shoot this summer,
Mhm.
because people like Ryan Gosling get like 30 scripts thrown at him every
Yeah.
every 4 weeks.
Mhm.
And he said because the guy that wrote my all-time favorite movie is writing and directing this film. That's why I'm doing it. And it was Shane Black. And I was like, wait, Ryan Gosling's a Monster Squad fan? I said, that's pretty cool. And
It
I actually met him. I ran into him and talked to him at the 101 coffee shop in LA one time, and we kind of hung out for a little bit. It was very cool.
well, it's good to know that, it's not just a small I mean, you obviously know now it's not a small collection of people, but the reach that this film has is enormous. I will say that, as I said in the beginning, my mom was the one who, had to record this film and she absolutely loved it. So shout out to my mom for, kind of
Absolutely.
showing me this. We kind of made it a thing where everything from aliens to child's play to I mean watching films at 8 9 years old I had no really shouldn't
business
have.
wise.
But
Right, right.
this isn't therapy. We're gonna get into that later. So switching gears, Wolfman got Nards. Really did this spectacular job of kind of honing in on the cult status of the film, and kind of was a very well done, well thought out love letter to the fans and the people who have kind of carried this film moving on. And when did you have the realization that this second life of the film had come? Because, like you said, it did not do great, unfortunately, and it just kind of appeared, and then it was off screen, and then it was kind of whispered about. And even within, as I said in the beginning, even within kind of my friends, only a handful of us had seen it and brought up, do you remember that film? Yeah, I remember that film. When did it like kind of impact you, like, wow, like they're talking about it again, like this is relevant?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is that first kind of reunion screening that we did at the Alamo Draft House in Austin, Texas, in 2006.
Hmm.
They got a hold of us and it's like, hey, we're doing this, and we got everybody together. And it was me, Ryan, and Ashley, and Fred went, and
Hmm.
we're like, where are we going? What are we doing? Someone has this movie, because it was 19 years,
Hmm.
after it came out, and we said, well, it's either going to be a really cool weekend or like totally lame, but we get a free trip to Austin. And I was bringing one of my best friends from college, came with me that weekend, and we played golf
Hmm.
like 2 days in a row. Like we don't know what we're doing. Like then we got to go see we got to go with like the showing Monster Squad, and
Hmm.
that's when we realized that there was something there. And that seminal event is what kind of blew everything up.
Hmm.
And a year later, Lionsgate had the video rights, and they put out the DVD, that you mentioned before. And then we were headlining conventions, and we were like, "Wow, this is very interesting, very cool. This is neat. This will last about 6 months,
Yeah.
maybe a year. Maybe we get to go do another convention next summer. That'd be fun."
Hmm.
And I'm doing 3 this month. And so it hasn't, it has not, it didn't wane and it didn't die.
Hmm.
It kept growing and growing ever since 2006, 2007. And after all of these events and these appearances and these conventions and screenings and festivals and,
Hmm.
just this outpouring and of attention, focused at us as the cast and the movie itself.
Hmm.
And then you hear these stories of these fans and these people that like this movie, whether they're, famous or not. And, after 3 or 4 years or 5 years of hearing these stories
Hmm.
and realizing the impact of this movie is a little bit different than other movies have a connection with their fan base.
Hmm.
And I started to listen differently, and I started to engage differently. And I realized after a while, the year before the 30th anniversary, I said, these stories are a story. And because what I'm seeing from a very unique perspective, which is the kid inside the bubble, or the kid from the movie that's now inside this bubble of this
Hmm.
resurgence, I have a very unique perspective of it because I'm on the inside of it. It's just swirling all around us.
Hmm.
And I I realized that there was something there that I thought was interesting to tell, because this movie impacted people and connected with them differently than other films connect with fans. And I wanted to look at that. And that was the kind of the spark for what Wolfman's Got Nards became.
Hmm. Now, would you say that that is solely the inspiration, kind of that, as you spoke about being inside that bubble and just all these voices being heard about you know what what has changed in life because of this film? And was that the point, that the takeoff, and you're like, yep, got to do this? Because direct, and was this your first time directing? Uh,
Uh, Directing something of this of
yeah.
of a feature documentary, yes.
So So you're jumping into this big thing, and you're like, I have something here. I want to create something, something that kind of honors something else that is so loved apparently, that you're, now kind of really self-actualizing that this is big, like, kind of, was that your taking off point, now jumping into this new role and being like, I have to do this?
It was certainly one of them. It was certainly one of
Hmm.
the jumping off points. I think a little bit of it. I think it was a combination of many little points of kind of energy. One of them was certainly that. The other was realizing that over the years, myself as you know the leader of the Monster Squad, and my other castmates that got to experience this very unique experience that not very many people get to experience.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to explain that a little bit, and how do you do that? How do we, it's 30 years later that we're still talking about this movie. Why? There's only one reason that we're still talking about this movie, and that's the fan base is that has made it a part of them, and it's a fabric of their lives, and sometimes it's part of the fabric of their skin. Because when your face is tattooed on someone's you know thigh or something, that's a unique connection, and sometimes it's horrifying and sometimes it's delightful. And but and then one of the major things was, hey, we've enjoyed 10 years, oh 06, oh 07, it was almost 10 years of this resurgence.
Hmm.
And I said, we're only getting, look, we've had way too long of a run, and it's not slowing down.
Hmm.
We've gotten all the attention over the last 10 years, and the only reason that any of us get to do this is because of you guys.
Yeah.
And how do you express that? How do you explain that? How do you show that? How do you celebrate that? And I really kind of wanted, the focus had been on us as, cast 30 years later, 20 years later, 25 years, 30 years later. It just never stopped.
Hmm.
And I was like, let's talk about not us for a second, and let's turn that kind of lens around on the people that are responsible for all this.
Hmm.
And it's the people that make the fan art. It's the people that kept their posters from 1987. It's the people that kept their VHS tapes, that they put a piece of masking tape on the side of it, and passed it around their neighborhood and their schoolyard and their cul-de-sac, and or their treehouse if they were fortunate enough to have an actual treehouse. And let's look at these people. Let's tell their story. And I got really lucky when I teamed up with Pilgrim Media Group, Pilgrim Studios, and got teamed up with my production kind of crew, led by my man Henry McComas, who was also grew up as a fan of Monster Squad, as did Wes Caldwell and Aaron and these guys that worked on this movie were connected in a way. No one did anything on this movie that wasn't connected to the Monster Squad some way,
Yeah.
and I think that shows. And these guys really did a fabulous job of getting as much information and footage and cutting it together and bringing what I knew was out there. I just didn't know how to do it, how to tell the story. We all worked together and we figured it out. And Henry, put a ton of work into this, as did Wes and Aaron and Shane, and came out with a really neat documentary that is jam packed with a lot of. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of
Yeah.
things. It's
It
it's not a
is.
making of doc. It's not a where are they
Hmm.
now doc. It's not a straight fan service doc, which those are fine.
Hmm.
Those are terrible. I guess some super fandom, be like, oh my god, I can, I love because so much fan service is out there now over the last what 8, 9, 10 years,
Yeah.
and it gets to be a little redundant. Um, I'm not a big. What's interesting, I'm not a big extra features guy. I don't like BTS stuff on
Hmm.
movies. I don't. I know how the sausage is made. I
Yeah.
go to the movies and watch something to go to a different world. I don't want to see the real shit.
Yeah.
But some people love BTS. They love the sausage. They love the fake. They want to. If they're fans of Aliens or Monster Squad or
Yeah.
whatever,
Hmm.
they want to see as much as they can, and I totally understand that. And so we try to bring a little of that to it too. And like I said, the Wolfman's Got Nards is it's 87 minutes or so, and it's jam packed with a ton of stuff, and it kind of touches all of those bases.
And I think it's a credit to you. It's a very and some people don't like the word unique, but it's a unique documentary because it does kind of have all those components instead of just being heavily in one regard or another. And I think you did a really nice job with it. So I first
Oh,
definitely
well,
want to
I
say that.
appreciate it. Like I said, that was a little bit of me and a lot of my team at at Pilgrim Studios at the time, led by Henry, because they knew there was something there, and how do we tell
Yeah.
it? And you know, we made that documentary in 10 months,
Wow.
and we started shooting in April, and we premiered at our first festival the next April, and that means, and we shot 50 terabytes of footage in that 10 months, and that's why it's jam packed with some good, with a lot of goodness. Because I put these guys through the ringer. I put
Hmm.
Ashley and Ryan through the ringer on a 3-week tour, at the 30th anniversary at the Alamos. A 17 cities in 17 days. And I
Hmm.
dragged a camera crew and production crew with me across the country. It's like, and it wasn't 17 cities like in California. We
Yeah.
started in San Francisco and ended in Virginia. So it was insane. But all of that work and those long days and hours, boy, it paid off. It really did, I think. And I don't know what else we could have done differently to make it better.
Hmm.
Um, Even if Ryan Gosling had sat down for an interview, he may have got cut. He may have
Yeah.
got.
I could just imagine him at the premiere be like, "What the? Are you kidding? Like, are you
I
serious?"
sat down for like 2 hours, and I'm not even in this thing.
Special thanks to Ryan Gosling.
That's right. He's an extra. He's a bonus feature. Like, buy the Blu-ray. Buy the Blu-ray.
I kind of I'm thinking about that now. Uh, the film in whole has like just amazing small bits to it. I wanted to just briefly mention "Rock Until You Drop" uh, by Michael Sembello. Might be one of the greatest '80s montages of of all time. Like it just works so well. Like I have showed it. I've shown it to a couple friends of mine who then were like, okay, I gotta watch this movie. All right, that's fine. That has actually lured them in, being like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that in there. There's nothing there. I just wanted to give a shout out
To,
to a
to
Philadelphia
Michael Sembello.
native, to Michael Sembello. But what talking back to the tattoos and all the artwork and stuff that you've seen, is there one piece of kind of memorabilia that you've seen out there in the world that you're like holy shit, this exists, like this is a thing?
I think you're wearing it.
This is I and I can't tell you, the first time I saw it was actually in nursing school back in 2008. A friend of mine had this version of the shirt. It was a V-neck, and I was like, you like Monster Squad? Like it was a little like, you like Monster Squad? He's like,
Yeah.
I fucking love Monster Squad. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, and I can tell you, I see this now on the street, especially when it comes to October. I've already seen about three or four of them just walking in the general vicinity of the
Right.
city of brotherly love. So it's out there. But I guess to you, it's a weird thing because you at 13 are just like wearing this shirt, and then so many years later, like, people wear that? Like, that's a thing? It is a
Yeah,
thing.
and but what is interesting is, and that was really just sort of a character description thing that I don't, probably, unless the costumer read the script and was like, "Oh, now I got to make a shirt."
Mhm.
Is this real? Like, let me ask the writer. Like, is this just a character description of this dorky kid, or do I have to go make an iron-on shirt that says Stephen King Wolf? And she did. And I wear it as this character in the movie, and it's just this thing that's nothing
Yeah.
until it becomes. It's literally a piece of film iconography now. And hopefully, these people that you're walking around seeing it, like they know Monster Squad, because, like you said,
Yes.
it becomes your secret handshake.
Yeah.
If
That's
you
and
run into somebody, you're like, Are you a
do
Monster
you
Squad,
like
or do you just
do
like
you like
the books?"
yeah, yeah.
Because
I
we've met a lot of people that have the shirt that don't know anything about the Monster Squad. They're just Stephen King fanatics, and which is totally fine. And we like to have fun with them. And I've even offered up like, "Hey, how's it going?" And it's like, "Good shirt." And they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "I'll tell you what, I'll sign it." And they're like, "Why would you ruin my shirt?" And I'm like, "Oh wait, you know, oh you don't know, you've never heard. Never mind. Have a great day. Bye." But yeah, I think of all the cool stuff, from the monsters to the creature feature artists to the amulet itself and the props and Rudy's bow and um, you know, Adidas. Um, I think the Stephen King Rules shirt, like I said, became this piece of film iconography that has become someone's badge. It's become their cape.
Mhm.
It's become their shield. It's become their go-to. This is what I sleep at night because it makes me comfortable. And I wear this out because I show my love for this movie. And if someone knows it, you give a nod and a wink across the room, and you just met someone that's also in the goddamn club.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like the connection and impact the whole film has on people. I mean, do people walk around in a fedora for Indiana Jones like they do with the Stephen King rules? No.
No.
Do they walk around? I don't know. Some people carry lightsabers now, but are people walking around in, you know, actually, some people walk around with a Captain America shield, but that's on purpose. Just not in their
Yeah.
everyday. That's not part of their lives. And
Mhm.
what I've also liked about the Stephen King rule shirts, and I didn't, it kind of rubbed me opposite when I first started seeing it. But when people would start making their own, is my favorite. Like a bunch of vendors and other stuff, would sell it and it looks
Yeah.
perfect and it's like,
Mhm.
it's great. But then people started making their own. It's like, that's what you're supposed to do. That's awesome. If you can find iron on stuff anymore, it's hard to find that. Now everything's just printed. You're like, no, I
Yeah.
need some iron ons. And but then they started changing the shirt. It would still say Stephen King rules, but it was maybe like black with white lettering. I was like, that's not the
Mm-mm.
shirt.
No.
That's not the shirt, folks.
Yeah.
But then I realized this thing's transcending itself, and it's growing beyond what it is, and people are making it their own. And I started to like really understand that and embrace it. And they were doing different fonts, and but they're still saying Stephen King rules. And then
Mhm.
the next evolution, it was someone else rules, and I'm like, this whole thing, this is all changing.
It took
Like
off.
this is getting it's now its own thing, and it's growing. And my I had my good pal, the comic and actor, Jonah Ray,
Mhm.
he has a shirt that says Dean Koontz is okay, I guess, and which is hilarious to me. So that was one iteration that made me kind of realize that this was going differently. And then, um, you know, I was somewhere and there was a Fred Decker rules shirt. I was like, damn right. And then someone sent me, I think it was Prince Jackson from the Nightlight podcast. He posted a photo. He had a shirt that said Regina King rules. I went, that's also true. I said, who doesn't love Regina King? And I was like, I'd wear that shirt.
Yeah, that's a great shirt.
And I've worn, I wore not the Stephen King rules shirt because it doesn't fit over my left arm anymore, but um, at that very first Alamo Drafthouse screening, that was the, if you had a ticket, you could get one. You could buy one, a Stephen King shirt. And they were like, "You would wear this, would you?" I was like, "No." All right, I'll wear it.
Yeah.
And I wore it under like a black suit jacket, with jeans.
Mhm.
And I was in a, it looked just like yours. And there's some cool photos, but I have not worn a red Stephen King Rule shirt since 2006. And I don't think I should. I think that would be weird. But if you do, there's I thought of something very cool because when again that 20th anniversary DVD that came out, we actually launched that at San Diego Comic Con. We had a big booth, and I mean, there's like 1,000 people came and got it
Mhm.
signed and their stuff. And I was like, I gotta do something here. This is early on. This is like 2007,
Yeah.
and we didn't know how long this would last. And so I said, it'd be cool. Let's update that shirt. And so I took an old black T-shirt and I
Mhm.
printed Stephen King rules in black on black, and you can barely see the light has to hit it just right. And I wore that, and a lot of people didn't even notice it until they take their photos and they go and they're
And
like,
then
"Oh
see.
shit!" So I thought that was very cool, and I wore that for that. And then if you have a really sharp eye, I brought that black shirt out when I'm on camera in the documentary. It's underneath my
That is something I'm gonna have to go back and look now. But I would say one of my favorite versions of this, someone has created it. Stephen King rules, and on the back it says rule number one: scary shit always happens. And that's,
jacket.
I mean, that's taking it to another level. But
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Once the creativity kind of came in, but you're first off, it has to be the ketchup and mustard look going on
exactly.
here.
It's so primary. It's so
It's
primary color. It's just so shocking.
and I think that's why it pops so well.
It's
Like
icon. That's the
it's
iconic of it. Yeah,
this is the red, white, and blue of Cap Shield right here.
that's exactly right.
This is it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, what is, and this is completely off topic, but on topic. What is your favorite scary movie?
Well, I don't know if it's the same answer or not. Usually, everybody asks, "What's my favorite horror movie?" And I'm really not like a horror aficionado. There's certain ones I enjoy,
Mhm.
but when I was a kid, they scared the shit out of me. Really, I was like, I ain't going to see that. So when people ask me what my favorite horror movie is, the quick answer is always The Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
It's absolutely a horror movie, and we can debate all day long, and I will win. Um, what's my favorite scary movie? Um, I'm going to go with something current. I'm going to go with something modern because I like to update myself. I thought Host was genius for what it was. Super hard to do.
Mhm.
I didn't believe that it was a Zoom movie as we're talking over Zoom. I thought that was just a setup, and I thought it was kind of product placement and bullshit.
Mhm.
Until I actually started reading more about it, and then now I'm sort of like DM friends with Jed Shepard, who wrote and produced it.
Oh, wow.
I haven't met Jed. I'm meeting Jed next week because I'll be in
Oh, there
London.
we go.
But Rob Savage, who directed it, um, I kudos to them for doing something during a pandemic and actually doing a Zoom movie with
Mhm.
effects, and the story's tight. The people are connected. It looks like everybody's in the same room. It's ridiculous, and it's super short, which is genius also. But it has some really good stuff that makes you because good horror movies and good genre movies are always a reflection of your time.
Yes.
That's what horror movies are. It doesn't matter if
Mhm.
it's you know 1932 Dracula or
Mhm.
2020 Host. It's a reflection of what's going on. And we were in a pandemic. We were all stuck, not be able to do much, and
Yeah.
we were communicating over Zoom and things like that. And hell, someone had the terrible idea of having a Zoom seance, thinking it wouldn't happen because you have to be in the same room for a spirit to get you. And god damn it, they were
Mhm.
wrong. And so I'll go with that for right now. But there's a lot of classics out there. I think are super good. Uh, and like I said, when I was a kid, horror movies, some of them, were a little scary. Um, I was in the movie theater with my sister and her friends, and we were there to see The Thing.
Mhm.
And when the dog turned inside out, she made me leave the theater and go next door. It's probably a good call. Probably a good call. But then I went and saw Megaforce, which scarred me worse than if I had stayed and watched The Thing. So, but now one of the 17 people that have seen Megaforce, and that's a memory that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't had to leave because the dog turned inside out. And but then a movie that really affected me was probably not. I saw The Exorcist way too young, but the original "I Spit on Your Grave."
Oh
Don't know
Jesus.
why I saw that movie when I saw it because that is not a nice
Mm,
film.
mm-mm.
There is not nice stuff going on in that um, at all. And then they remade it. Jeez. Someone said, "You know what we should remake?" I was like, "Oh, uh,
That's probably one of the best reviews I've. It's a lot of not nice stuff going on. Like if that
there's
was
a
the
lot of not
byline.
nice. There's a lot of not nice in Act One, Two, and Three. There's a lot of not nice. Uh, so yeah, I don't know whether I was like my mind was broadened from seeing a whole. I saw so many different types of movies, especially as a kid, because I was
Mhm.
exposed to them,
Yeah.
and I was interested in them. And I used to watch old movies. I loved watching old movies on the weekends, or I'd see something with my dad and grew up watching World War II movies. Those are horror movies
Mm,
too.
jeez.
Um, there's monsters and explosions and death.
Mm.
Um, and then became I was a Cold War kid, because I'm an '80s, '70s, and '80s child, and Cold War movies become sort of your identity, and
Mhm.
whether they're spy thrillers or they're apocalyptic type thing. That's the range of Cold War movies, right? It's either this really slow burn great spy movie
Mhm.
or the world ended.
Yeah.
Like it's
Super
it,
dystopian,
it's
Clockwork
right.
Orange, or
Yeah.
the early '80s classic awful horror psychological thriller movies that, like you said, scar you. That's what they do. They scar you because I know you
Yeah.
can think right now in your mind and be like, yeah, that was messed up. I shouldn't have that. I was probably too young for that. Or
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, look, and that was the time of, Jason and we had Freddy, who I think
Mhm.
is probably the most terrifying baddie in horror of all time because he doesn't exist except for in your mind.
In your safe in your sanctum of dreams,
That's right.
the
So
safest place. You're in
the
your bed.
safest
You're
place you
asleep.
could possibly be is now deadly. And that
That's the
scared
second
that you're like,
byline.
this
That's
is
the new
not
nightmare byline. The safest place is now deadly.
that's
That's
right. Especially when you're a kid, you're like, "I love going to bed and having dreams. This is amazing. Fuck this!" You're like, "Get out of my head." And there was, it's '80s, it's bad effects. They're simple, but it's still scary. And
mhm.
you know, uh, I think the claw coming out of the tub with Heather in there, is probably as iconic a piece of photography as you get. I think is it Depp that gets killed in the bed? Yeah, it's Depp that gets killed in the
Yes.
bed. Yeah, that's
He's
terrible.
got the headset on and he's just
Yeah,
chilling
it's
and dozing
terrifying.
off, and then there's just
Yeah, it's terrifying.
and then you see the coroner come in throwing up
Yeah,
and
and
the
and then probably the the clown under the bed and Poltergeist scared the shit out of me too.
Jesus.
And I just with I just spent the weekend 2 weeks ago with Oliver, the kid from Poltergeist, who's not a
Really?
kid. We're not kids
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
And I'd never met him before, and we were at a convention, and we were sitting next to each other the whole weekend, and we just talked and talked and talked. And what blew my mind was like, okay, he's the kid in Poltergeist. He's also the kid in Airplane, which is my
Yeah,
all-time favorite comedy movie. That goes into the cockpit. It's
yeah, yeah.
like you like movies about gladiators.
You ever been to a bathhouse?
It's right. You ever like to hang out in the locker room after the big game? And it's just fun. You ever seen a grown man naked? And to see someone like Peter Graves do that scene is crazy with this little kid just going.
Yeah.
And I texted Ryan Lambert. I go, dude, I'm sitting next to Oliver, from Airplane and
Mm.
Poltergeist. He goes, I know. I'm like, yeah, but this is cool. He's like, he's like, tell him, yeah, he thinks he's cool, but my dad doesn't think you work hard enough on defense. And I'm like, if I had had a drink, I would have Rudy spit take right there as I was texting Ryan Lambert, because that's just hilarious. And to make that full circle, I used to have a podcast with Ryan Lambert years ago called Squadcast, and because why not?
Great name.
But we vowed never to talk about Monster Squad on Squadcast. It didn't work, but
Yeah.
we told stories, and we actually Ryan met David Zucker at a party and said,
Hmm.
"Dude, you have to be on our podcast." He's like, "Okay, come over to my house." And so David Zucker is one of the Zucker brothers with Jim Abrams that made Airplane, and also the better movie, which is Kentucky Fried Movie, which I think is even more
Oh my
hilarious.
god.
And we were in his house, and then I met Oliver. I'm like, I'm having all of this Airplane connection now, and it's amazing. And that was I've done a lot of cool shit, but
Hmm.
going to David Zucker's house because in his office he has all the memorabilia from there. And I'm
Are you
usually not a
serious?
proper memorabilia guy,
Hmm.
but he's got he's got the Nun's Life magazine in a frame, and he's got the Anal Intruder box from Top Secret, and the best thing in his house is he's got his Top Secret's actually a genius movie and a genius performance by Val Kilmer,
Val
who
Kilmer.
first thing ever. No one realizes how good he is in that movie, and we got the story like he was in this off Broadway musical, and David Zucker saw this kid in this musical, and it
Hmm.
was Val Kilmer. It's like he's got to be in our comedy, our farcical, you
Hmm.
know, and he was genius in that. I mean, Val Kilmer's good anyway,
Yeah.
but the when he's on the train and he's painting, and then you
Hmm.
see the picture and it's all blurry because it's that's just genius comedy. And he has that painting in his office. I took a photo. This is iconography to me. And but yeah, I mean, it's we got off a tangent there. Sorry, but it's
Well worth it. Well worth it.
that happens with the Andre every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, what were we talking about? Scary movies, and then and we went to the Clown and Poltergeist. That those are
Yeah.
little tidbits of things that are absolutely terrifying.
Hmm.
And for about the same time, I really hated the little gnome guy in Cat's Eye. I did not like that guy
Oh
at all.
god.
He scared the crap out of me. Uh, and it's just little things like that. And but we had such it was just prolific of the types of horror movies that we had. 70s
Hmm.
sort of had a feel. They were gritty, grindy, and then we got into Jason.
Yeah.
But then 80s just kind of ran the gamut. You still had gritty, grindy. You had
Hmm.
farcical. You had Freddy. You had more creature features. You had slumber party
Hmm.
massacres, and then think pieces like Stephen King stuff and
Hmm.
John Carpenter, kind of whatever you want to call it. And it was just kind of an interesting time for a genre. It was just so much out there,
Yeah.
and it was crazy. And then you have Monster Squad,
Which, but
which I don't know if
it
it's a
fits
horror
right.
movie,
It fits right
it's
in though.
a kids
It
adventure
really
movie.
does. It I
It,
I refer to it as scary Goonies, because and I put that in the cavalcade of this is where they're at for me especially, and I hope for others out there, because at its whole, the premise is very straightforward. You have these kids who are put together in these extraordinary circumstances, and parents who just are like Dracula, what, the mummy. Even the one scene with uh oh my god, my brain, Michael
which
Faustino
character?
is Michael
Oh,
Faustino's
yeah,
in the bed, and
Eugene.
he's just Eugene, thank you.
Yeah,
And he's pointing, and the mummy, and the dad's like, ooh, big scary, like that is that's classic. As a dad now, like
you're right.
I pretty much believe my son that whatever, if he was like Frankenstein's in my closet, I'd be like, where is that son of a bitch? Like, well, let's go like find him out. But again, we grew up seeing that and like being like, maybe we need to believe our kids. But circling back around, there's so much in it. It's not just a straightforward, this is a by the numbers scary movie or horror movie or anything like that. It's a little bit of everything. There's comedy, it's action and adventure, it's like this it's just a great premise, a great story. And again, you had such a strong cast, you had everybody who really fit in their role. And it's one of the reasons why I just every October I it has to be on. And I'm sure you love October too, because I mean it's fucking everywhere.
It
Um
is, yeah.
and you're everywhere, which kind of jumps into our closer here, like, what are you up to? Where are you going? What's next?
Well, I mean, of course, with recordings, it all depends on when people get to hear it. But we're in the middle of October, and like you said, it's always kind of busy if you are so inclined to be busy in October.
Hmm.
There's usually screenings galore or appearances requests or conventions, and I'm super lucky this year. One, just because we're coming out of a year that everything was canceled,
Hmm.
but I was looking forward to everything opening up again and having a kind of a robust October, and then going into the end of the year and spring, and having all these things to enjoy, including promoting the documentary, which just got released last October domestically, and our
Hmm.
international stuff is coming out as we speak. And so got to focus on that and do that, and these are great ways to do that. But I wasn't sure I was able to do any of this because, as you may or may not know, or your audience may or may not know, I had a massive heart attack in July,
Hmm.
and 5 or 6 things conspired in my favor on that Saturday morning to let me make it through that hour.
Hmm.
And then I had a few days in the ICU, not knowing what the damage was, what next week or next year would look like if there was one.
Hmm.
And things really, it's certainly not like it didn't happen. It certainly an ordeal to go through, and still going through it. Of kind of recovering from it. But I felt good enough in September to call these places up and say, hey, the invitation's still open. I feel like
Hmm.
I feel like I can get out there and enjoy these things. I didn't want to skip another year,
Hmm.
uh, you know, because of a pesky heart attack.
How dare you?
But that some, sort of how I feel sometimes. I'm like this. Screw this thing's not taking me out. No
Yeah.
way. Come on, let's
Hmm.
don't be ridiculous. We saved the world from.
I know that there's no vortex sucking you in.
Yeah,
Fuck
I'm like,
that. We're
and a blood clot gets me. I don't think so. Um, but so I was fortunate enough. I've been very busy. I've already been 2 events this October. I'm
Mhm.
getting ready to leave. I go to Manchester, England tomorrow
Oh,
with
wow.
Ryan Lambert for a big giant genre festival in Manchester.
Mhm.
They're screening the Monster Squad in London on the 19th. We're going to go down and check that out. And we were going to crash it, but then we decided to announce that we were going, which either way is cool.
Yeah.
And then we come back and we go to Philadelphia next weekend. So at the we are returning to Monster Mania, which is actually the first convention we ever did in 2007. And so Monster Mania is the 21st to the 23rd, I think, if those dates are right. And so I get to go back to Philadelphia and hang out with Philadelphia folk.
Um, so, closing out here, first, happy that, a blood clot, just kind of did not go the way, that, unfortunately, it goes with some people, and
Mm,
very happy and glad that you are here. And I
appreciate
say
that.
that
Me
I
too.
say I'm sure you're pretty stoked too. Uh, just a voice from obviously all of your fans out there that, like, we are very, I didn't want to bring it up, obviously,
Oh,
but
I,
we were
I I
just
don't mind. I enjoy talking about it.
okay.
And it's one of the
All right.
points.
Yeah.
Talking about it and awareness and telling
Hmm.
the story. And if that gets someone to go get checked and avoids just one, it's
Yeah.
totally worth mentioning.
Hmm.
So,
Kudos to the medical staff, doctors, nurses, and everyone who did everything
indeed,
they could. And obviously,
indeed.
you're here now eating your natural peanut butter and whole grain sandwiches.
Which I did before the heart attack. By the way, I didn't know, everybody thinks my whole lifestyle changed. I'm like, not really. Like when people have this happen to them and their world changes, they
Yeah.
change how like my lifestyle. I don't smoke. I
Yeah.
drink like a beer every 6 months. I don't
Hmm.
use. I'm not on a ton of prescriptions, fortunately. Even prior,
Yeah.
I'm athletic. I'm always active, and I eat super
Hmm.
well, and I eat clean, and I
Yeah.
don't eat that much. And my heart blows up.
Yeah.
So who knows? Who
I think
knows?
the story there is it should have been, alcohol every day, Coke, you just blowing through everything and then be like, oh, now my heart. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, this
Because
is
now,
totally on brand.
yeah,
Totally on brand. If it's
because now you're going through the checklist, being like, what the fuck what can I get
uh,
rid of? Like, what can I?
yeah, can I eat more salads during the like? This is I don't know. I think I'm salad reservoir is full. And I had one today, and cilantro is very not nice things. So I didn't eat myself. It didn't say it in the ingredients, and I got it. I was like, cilantro. And I can't. I have the gene that doesn't like cilantro.
It's tastes like soap, doesn't it? It's like
Yeah, it
or
tastes like
something.
soap that did the sequel to "I Spit on Your Grave." Apparently, cilantro's terrible.
So you're telling me that cilantro did a lot of very not nice things.
Very not nice things to my mouth.
That's our byline for this podcast.
I
All
hope
right.
that's not taken out of context.
We are gonna close out here. First off, thank you for joining us on Gate Crashers podcast. This is André Gower. You can see him in all the many conventions that he aforementioned, and I look forward to speaking to him personally in Philadelphia. Hopefully, we'll see if these stars align. This has been Richard Durante for Gate Crashers podcast. Follow us, enjoy this interview, and we will see you all next time. Thank you, Andre.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Appreciate it.